to the show.
All right, so tell us about yourselves. Who I don't know who wants to go.
Who are you?
first.
Cool. Well, I'm Amer. Y'all can catch me on any social media at Ameratron. Somebody's gonna write it somewhere. I make comedy videos on the regular, and yeah, that's about it.
Cool. My name's Jerramy. I go by Jay most of the time. I'm a rule engine developer as of now, I guess you would say, and I also own a real estate marketing business called Bridge Media Company.
Straight.
So everybody doing good today?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Cool.
But yeah, one of the questions I wanted to ask you guys was basically you said you was a comedian, right?
Yes, sir.
How long you been doing comedy?
So doing comedy, I've been doing comedy for about 4 to 5 years now, but I have not been taking it seriously until about I want to say a year and a half ago. When I first started doing comedy, I just went to the stand-up comedy club at ODU, and after going a couple weeks, I decided, you know what, let me give this a try. Tried out stand-up for a couple years. Anytime I had a weekend off and I had some time and some good material, just go on stage and try it, and had a lot of fun, enjoyed it. And then I ended up hitting a period where I felt like I came up with a lot of jokes and a lot of ideas that in my head I thought were hilarious, and I would have these almost like a vision of a story that would play out in my head, and I knew it was funny, but I was struggling to say it in a way that made other people laugh. So I ended up going back, and after binging just on some Netflix for a while, I figured, you know what, I love sitcoms. I love watching all these comedy shows.
Like which ones?
My favorite at the time when I started was It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. That show was just wild. It was just because every episode I never knew what to expect, and every episode I would always end up dying of laughter at the end. But that wasn't the only show that inspired me. I was inspired by a lot of shows growing up. I watched a lot of Bernie Mac show growing up, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Yeah, bro, just a lot of different. Martin was hilarious, bro.
How you wear a shirt like that and not bring up Martin?
That's true. No, but yeah, I grew up watching comedy my whole life. I kind of was raised in front of a TV for a significant amount of my childhood. So I ended up realizing when I was struggling in stand-up that there might be other avenues for me to pursue my comedy. So that's when I started writing out scripts and then recording my own videos. And it was a struggle, I remember, at first, especially trying to collaborate with people when you're first starting out, not knowing really not knowing what you're getting into, and over time I kind of had to learn it really is a huge process, because nowadays and I'll tell you, a lot of comedians that I collaborate with, it's the same way. They are a one-man production team. I gotta write my scripts, film it, edit it, organize the cast, to make sure everybody is cast correctly, because if you get the wrong person in the wrong role, your whole vision can collapse. So over time, I ended up learning that stand-up, while it was something that I loved and I still practice all the time, was not the best avenue for a lot of the ideas that I was coming up with in my head.
Right.
And that's when I really started pursuing comedy writing and then comedy filmmaking. And that's what I've been doing for the last year and a half.
Cool.
Nice.
So you bring up an interesting point. I was on the phone with my boy yesterday, and we were talking about comedy, because I kind of bounce ideas and see what he thinks. And so he brought up a distinction. He said that it's a difference between a traditional comic and a social media comic. So what do you feel about that? Because you said you had trouble initially translating your ideas, which is more like skits, into on-stage stand-up. So what's the difference in your opinion?
So the difference between on-stage stand-up, I want to say, and any other form of comedy, and this is why I have huge respect for stand-up comedians, is, to me, stand-up comedy is the rawest form of comedy.
Yeah.
It's the original form of comedy. I mean, when the Greeks made comedy, it was a man standing on stage, telling jokes, making funny skits live. And the pressure of putting on a live performance is something that not only I can't explain, I feel like it's something that you don't ever get used to. So for me, when I see a stand-up comedian go up there and look so natural and so confident and just and just spitting out jokes, even some that are coming off the dome, to me that is like the ultimate form of comedy. But with our technology now, we have so many different ways that we can put out comedy. To me, yeah, stand-up comedy might be the rawest form, but it's not the rawest form of storytelling. And that's why I like a lot of visual kind of comedies, because you can mix in a lot of different storytelling elements that you wouldn't necessarily be able to put in on in a traditional stand-up comedy. Now, you brought up social media, right?
Yeah, so he argued that social media comics, they aren't real comedians.
See, I disagree, because comedy's always changing. Constantly always changing.
But why does he say that exactly?
Because of the amount of, like, he said stuff, the videos you see on social media for like Instagram comedians, YouTube comedians is different versus like what actually is going on is funny. The people themselves aren't what's like actually making you laugh. It's the situation they find themselves in. So you try to say that
So it's the idea, not the actual
content. That's what he's getting at.
Okay.
See, I feel like it's hard to even make bold statements like that right now, because when you look at the internet, I mean, anybody on the planet can post anything. So how can you even come up with a label like social media comedian when, in all honesty, if you were to check my content, for example, it's not like anybody else's content. If you check a lot of the people that I network with, like King Vader, like Caleb City, who's somebody that like I looked up to and really motivated me to start making videos. If you look at anybody on my team, Wolf Graphic, that's Official Taz, Young Astro, Irving Comedy, all these people come up with original ideas that I promise you would not be able to find anywhere else. And the thing I'm even trying to figure out right now is I'm trying to get my brand up is how do you target your audience? Because no matter who you are, if you are coming out with quality stuff, and again, if you're coming out with stuff that isn't good, you know, I can't help you there.
Yeah, you can.
But if you are coming up with stuff that someone somewhere will like, and you push for and find your audience, people can call you whatever you want. People can say whatever you want. You're making genuine people laugh on the other side. And if you're doing your job as an entertainer, I don't know how somebody can tell you whether you are or not a comedian. I mean, there are a lot of people that I look at, and I will stare at it the whole time, not laughing. I don't think this cat is funny at all.
Yeah.
But he made somebody else laugh. So to them, that's a funny comedian. To me, he's nothing. You know what I mean? But comedy is art, and that it's subjective, so it's hard to put labels like that.
Jay, who's your favorite comedian?
Jim Carrey.
Jim Carrey. Respectable. Very respectable. I'm a fan of Jim Carrey myself.
Yeah, I'm a fan of him though, outside of comedy though. So have you watched Jim Carrey documentary?
No, I haven't, but I've seen some of the interviews he's done.
How he had to like stop acting because he felt like he was losing himself.
Yeah,
I was on Netflix.
Yeah.
Oh, I haven't watched it, but I know the one you're talking about.
When did it come out?
I don't know when it came out. I stumbled upon it like last year. It probably came out earlier than that, if not around the same time or something like that. But he has stuff like on YouTube where he goes to like colleges and he speaks and he talks, and he does a lot of things with. He spends most of his spare time painting because that's how he feels like he gets his emotions
He's actually
out.
good.
Yeah, he's actually pretty good at it.
Yeah, his paintings are charged too.
If none of you guys watched it, I advise you to watch that. It'll make you like Jim Carrey even more as a person.
What's your favorite Jim Carrey movie?
The Green Mask.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm a Bruce Almighty guy.
Yeah, it's just a
I think it's
mask.
just
Oh, it's just called The Mask?
Yeah.
I thought it was a Green Mask.
I'm a Bruce Almighty guy myself.
That
Come
was,
on now.
It wasn't funnier than The Mask though.
Right, Ace Ventura for me. I can't get over that.
You like Jim Carrey?
Yeah, Bruce Almighty, I guess I would say. I can't recollect as many Jim Carrey movies off the top of my head, but Bruce Almighty and The Mask is main two I think of, and Ace Ventura too. But Bruce Almighty I would say because Morgan Freeman. Yeah.
Playing God?
Yeah. I have a question about that actually.
What's up?
So you say Jim Carrey is your favorite comedian, right? I've always noticed that a lot of times when a comedian does some really iconic work, they don't necessarily have to keep up with being a comedian to be labeled a comedian. Because in all honesty, when's the last time Jim Carrey has given a performance that you would say, hey, this is a comedian writing his own original comedic performance? It's been a minute. But he, at this point, is such an icon. You know what I mean? That Jim Carrey, at this point, is more than just Jim Carrey the comedian. It's Jim Carrey. Kind of like, Oprah. Like, he's just a word at this point, like an icon.
That's who you know him as. The same thing with, so a friend of mine the other day were asking why do people still call Dwayne Johnson The Rock? It's because he was so iconic. That's how most people knew him as The Rock. And then once he became prominent, the people that go hardest for him are the wrestling fans. He's The Rock. He's always going to be The Rock.
Right. I think it just comes at a point in time where you get to, I wouldn't say look up to that person, or it comes at a point in time when you discover that person. You know, like what he said about Dwayne Johnson. I don't call him Dwayne Johnson.
Yeah.
Johnson, I call him Rock. He's always going to be The Rock to me, like no matter what. And then it's just Jim Carrey. I just stumbled upon him when, you know, I first started sitting in front of a TV. My dad popped in, you know, the VHS tapes, and all he played was Jim Carrey. So that's what I know. I know Jim Carrey. If anybody talks about comedy, I'm gonna say Jim Carrey. Like, of course, Bernie Mac and all that, but Jim Carrey is the first person that pops in my head. That's why I responded so quickly. Like, who's your favorite?
Oh, you knew, like you were prepared for it.
Yeah, like Jim Carrey, like no question, hands down. Like, so.
But welcome to the show, though.
Yeah, man.
But welcome back to the Infusion Breakdown Show. As always, it's your boy Joshua Freeman. To my left, I got Mr. Bryan Carey. We got two special guests, Mr. Amer, Mr. J. Hope everybody's doing good. But everybody's week is doing as well, also.
Yeah, it was going good, man. How about yours?
It was good.
It's cool.
This is EP.23. And to extend on the comedy conversation that we was talking about, one of the questions I wanted to ask you guys was, what role does comedy play in today's society? What do you guys think about that? Since you're the comedian, you can go first if you want.
So, comedy plays a huge role in society right now. And I feel like this is a topic that like we could just spend hours unpacking just this, because like when it comes to political comedy alone, you know what I mean? Just separate every other form of comedy right now. The sheer amount of late night TV shows that popped up ever since the 2016 election is insane. We went from having one or two political comedy shows to every night on almost every single major network channel there's a political comedy show.
I feel like they haven't been on though.
I'm saying those two were the primary, Jon Stewart and Conan.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
No, like back in the day, it was like Jon Stewart, Colbert, and like that's
Colbert.
it.
That's what I meant.
Yeah, and nobody else. Now it's Trevor Noah, Colbert still.
He took Jon Stewart's place, though, didn't he?
Yeah. Trevor Noah took Jon Stewart's place, and then they got like Samantha Bee, they got John Oliver, they got Deezus and Mero got their own late night talk show now. They got so many different late night talk shows that are so focused on politics, and the reason I feel that is because right now we're in a space where I feel like when people turn on the news, they can't relate to what they're hearing. They're hearing a bunch of like wonky stuff that doesn't fit their worldview, if that makes sense. When people turn on CNN, MSNBC, and they're listening to them talking about politics and Trump and all that shit, they're not. I'm sorry, I don't know if I can curse on here. I don't think that people really feel any kind of relief from that. You know what I mean? You're stressed. You turn on the news. You turn it off. You're more stressed. You don't feel good after watching the news. But when you watch a late night comedy show and they're talking about the news, you walk away from that feeling like you learned something, feeling like you're relieved, you laughed, you enjoyed yourself, and feeling like, you know, even with all of this, you can walk through it with a smile because through all of that like craziness that they're analyzing in the news, they're finding their humor. They're finding something in it that you can take from it, learn from, and smile through. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that's just political comedy alone. And that's such a small section of comedy. When you mix into the fact that Netflix right now is just blowing up with stand-up specials. I mean, comedians that haven't done a stand-up special in 15, 20 years are jumping back up and just doing stand-up comedy specials. I can't even keep up because every time I turn on Netflix, I'm seeing like new specials from comedians that I need to watch and like add to my list. So I feel like right now, especially with social media, right? Attention is a commodity. It's something that we have a very limited amount of. Back in the day, you could devote your attention to a lot of different shows because there weren't that many different shows. But nowadays, you have to be selective because you only have so much time in the day, and so many notifications on your phone are trying to distract you. You know what I mean? Speak of the devil, yeah. But yeah, exactly. I mean, when you have that kind of space where people have all the access and time to unlimited entertainment, it makes the ability to grab people's attention a valuable skill.
Really, yeah.
And the more that skill is valued, the more you're going to see people pop up to try to fill that gap.
So you said
Go ahead.
you're a Jim Carrey guy. That's your
Right.
favorite comedian. So what's your take? Because his style can be. I don't think you specified who your favorite comedian was, but you seem to have like a similar, or I just want to hear what you have to say. Based upon like, what do you think the role of comedy is?
The role of comedy for, I think it plays a role where it basically is a way to take your mind, like he said, like a way to take your mind off of things that bring stress into your life, or it's just a way to take your mind away from things that leave you in worry. You know what I mean? So like, let's say like if I just walked in here, right, and my girl broke up with me, right, I'd be probably sat down, droopy head down. So let's say he crack a joke, it's like my mind moves into a different spot in my brain, and now I'm not thinking about that anymore. I'm thinking about the joke he just told me.
Even just for a second.
Even just for that second, like it's just I think it's a form of therapy, if you want to put it in that way. Like I never understood, right, when people get sad. Well, actually, after I just said that, I understand. It's kind of like Misery Loves Company. It's like if you get sad, like a girl will go watch like a sad TV show. It's like, oh, I feel like the way you feel, now we're connecting, something like that. But I feel like if more people were to be like, I'm in a really, some people probably do it, but if they were like in a depressive state, or if they were just in a state of mind where they didn't have the motivation or something like that, or worry, if they were to put on like their favorite comedy show, I'm pretty sure like that would just drift to another part of their mind, as in like, you're not thinking about that anymore. Like this, it's kind of like a form of distraction, but in a good way.
Yeah.
In a good sense. You know what I mean? That's just how I look at comedy. It's all like piggybacking off of what he said. So, it's just a way to distract you from things that can have a negative effect on you. I don't think comedy can really have. Maybe it can, but I can't think of a negative. I don't think it can affect you in a negative way unless you're the butt of the joke.
Yeah.
See, the thing is, like, I feel like you bring up a really good point, but that to me is the reason why I feel like comedy needs to be one of the places in society where you're allowed to screw up and offend sometimes, as long as you are not doing it with a hurtful intention. I feel like a lot of times people don't count intention. And to me, intention is everything. If you are saying a joke, right, there is a very thin line between a hilarious dark joke and a horrible offensive joke. It's a thin line, and it takes skill to be able to touch on these subjects without offending people. And I feel like that's one of the struggles of comedy. Like, it's a back and forth. One, the comedian has to be able to say a joke without pissing off the crowd, because if you piss off the crowd, what kind of comedian are you?
One is out of a job.
Exactly. But at the same time, if you start regulating comedy to the point where every time somebody makes a mistake, they get vilified for it, I feel like it puts people in a space where they're not able to get that therapy that they might need. And in my opinion, everybody kind of deals with trauma and stress differently. People process things differently. And to the person who's looking and saying, oh, how can you find this funny? This is offensive. This upsets me. That might not be your therapy. That might not be the way
it's not for you.
It's not for you, right? But don't take that away from the people who it is for. Because there are people out there that when they hear that joke that might be edgy, I don't want to say offensive, because offensive material that is like actually wrong should not be like laughed at and like thrown out. And sometimes people will try to excuse their own ignorance by saying, "Oh, I'm just joking." And these are not the situations I'm talking about. The situations I'm talking about are times where people say, I am personally offended, so I believe the fact that I am personally offended overwrites your right to have this kind of therapy. And I disagree with that completely.
Right. So you brought up a very interesting point, because it's a nice segue to like the Kevin Hart situation that happened earlier this year with the Oscars. You remember that?
I don't know what happened.
He stepped down from hosting the Oscars because some people, they found some old tweets he had made about. So one in particular was by his son. If you ever caught his son playing with a Barbie doll house or something like that, that what he would do, I think he would smack him inside the head. It was a joke, like a completely facetious tweet, and people were calling and saying that he was homophobic, along with some other tweets that he had said. And he's a comedian, so the intent wasn't there. And he also was saying on the Joe Rogan podcast how he's evolved as a human being, and he apologized a few times for like back then he apologized again. He actually apologized like 3 times, but he's done. He refuses to talk about it anymore. And the fact that it was so much outrage for you to see like all the good that Kevin Hart has done. Like I'm not a Kevin Hart fan, but I can see he makes a significant difference in other people's lives, the people around him. He loves his family, and for you to think he's actually a hateful human being, all he does is promote positivity, is just ridiculous. So just the fact that you're calling for somebody to step down. Go ahead.
So it was all because he said it about his son?
No, it was some tweets that he had made like 9 years ago.
Yeah, 10 years.
Yeah.
10-year-old tweets.
Yeah, 10-year-old tweets.
And the one thing that I always felt like that Kevin Hart situation was a really, really good example of where a Twitter mob can be angry without an actual goal. So with the situation that Kevin Hart went through, right?
But before you go into that, though, I think we should look at Kevin Hart's comedy as far. Okay, I agree with you guys as far as you guys' comedy is definitely to help with the hardships that you see in life. As far as Kevin Hart, as a black person, we use comedy to help with those hardships. So Kevin Hart might have actually meant what he said as far as all the jokes, but we use that as those hardships. And I feel that we had a conversation about society now has, I guess, it's a little more sensitive, a little bit. Yeah, a lot more sensitive. So, so people just take everything and you're like, oh, he said that. Oh, nah.
But see, to a degree, I feel like there's some plus that comes with that sensitivity and some cons. And on the actual statement of the tweets that he said 10 years ago, they were wrong. I mean, he himself apologized, said he does not stand by that. I'm not going to sit here and stand by a statement that even the person who said it is saying it's wrong. You know what I mean? Those statements were wrong, and he shouldn't have said it.
After they got the apology, they were still pressing the issue. So he said,
exactly.
What do you want?
And more than that, he apologized in the past. So it's not like he kept his mouth shut until it blew up 10 years later. He had apologized, and then he chose to apologize again. Now, I really think it was smart as hell for him to say, you know what, I made my statement, and I'm no longer talking about this issue. Because in this media climate where people are obsessed with the latest hot story, it might irritate people for a few days that Kevin Hart is not going to participate in the story. But more importantly than that, people are going to get bored, and then people are not going to participate in the story. If Kevin Hart kept arguing, these people would have kept tweeting about it.
Yeah.
But Kevin Hart stopped. He said, you know what? Tweet by yourself. Do it by yourself. And the noise died down. And on top of that, Kevin Hart had a lot of actual people, within the LGBTQ community that were standing up and vouching for him and saying, yes, these statements that he made 10 years ago are not indicative of this person 100%.
That reminds me, because I was listening to some of Bernie Mac. Imagine if Bernie Mac was still alive.
Dude, imagine if Delerious came out today.
I was listening to some old stand up for Bernie Mac. I was like, damn, I'm kind of offended on this. I don't know why.
But see, the thing is, you also gotta give him a little plus, because you mentioned Delerious, right?
Yeah.
I remember one.
Delerious.
It
was great.
Yeah, it was hilarious. But I remember one joke, right? Now there was a lot of things that that Eddie Murphy said, right? That would definitely not fly today, and definitely are offensive, right? But sometimes I feel like you also got to give people credit where credit is due. Eddie Murphy did stand up there, and I don't know the joke completely, but he had a joke about not hating on gay people.
It's the police car one?
I'm not sure, but I remember he said...
they have the gay guy on top of the car making the noise?
No, it wasn't that one. It was just a joke about how it's okay, for some dudes to suck dick. He
so
he said something about having a gay
cool
friend.
with them, but when they go do their thing,
Exactly. All right, I'll catch you later. I'm gonna go mow the lawn. All right, man, I'm gonna go suck a dick. See, that joke made everybody laugh, right? But you got to look at the message of that joke. This is the '80s, and he might have said a lot of offensive things, but I also think it's important to give him a prop for him standing up there and saying, "Hey, for real, there's nothing wrong with you being gay and going and doing your thing."
It was extremely progressive.
It was extremely progressive, right? And I don't think we can sit here and knock people without also giving them the plus that they deserve. Now, now don't take it too far and start complimenting Hitler on any great qualities he had. Everything's in context.
Well, in all fairness, I don't think he was a funny person.
That's true.
I don't think Hitler was that funny.
He was in the crowd. Right, the Jews, this guy.
Oh, another one.
Bro, there's got to be something wild about those speeches because I can't understand German, and when I hear it, it sounds crazy to me, and I don't even know what the hell he's saying. So he has to have been saying some sweet shit to be convincing all those fucking people to be wilding in his rallies. Like, gosh.
Yeah. I mean, there was something to it to get the people, I guess, to get them behind the cause.
Yeah.
What do you think is the role of comedy? Because I don't think we had this discussion before.
No, I basically was saying I agree with him. It's basically to stop with the hardships of life and speaking as a black person, we exhibit comedy in situations for satire reasons. But the one of the questions I want to ask is, because you talk about political comedy and all the satire, like late night shows and everything like that, I feel like, do you feel like people actually learn from that type of comedy? You do?
Right, so, well, you can ask that first. I'll go into it later.
No, go ahead. You already had to say.
I was going to say.
You already started.
My favorite comedian is Chris Rock, straight up, hands down. And so what makes comedy so great, and you said it reveals like a fundamental truth, because there's like a bit of truth to every great joke. So one of my favorite, shows that Chris did was Bigger and Blacker, and the bit where he was talking about daddy. You know how everybody, the difference between like genders and mothers and fathers. So he was saying how everybody thanks mom for everything. Like, tell your mama your hair looks nice. Tell your mama the food tastes good. Tell your mama the house looks nice. Tell your mama. Tell your mama. Tell your mama. He said nobody tells daddy shit, which is true, because you think about just the way that fathers are portrayed in the media. For example, they just don't, like Homer Simpson, for example, like the stereotypical dumb father who just works or is very, I guess, detached. And then you look at the way Father's Day and Mother's Day are advertised in the media. So everybody gets their mom nice, they'll take her to restaurants, go to church, dress up, look nice, give her a diamond necklace or something. But daddy, he gets a screwdriver. He gets a screwdriver or a pocket knife. So it was something that was really funny, because I feel like within that there was a large nugget of truth. And also with a lot of the other stuff he said, for example, in Tambourine was another great special. A lot of things he said there, that everything that he was saying, you laughed because you knew it was true. And it goes back to what you were saying about comedy being offensive. And when you start to censor people having those, the comedians being able to produce that kind of material, you're kind of like silencing a part of themselves, because we all have thoughts that we are not necessarily proud of, and that we wouldn't come out right and say.
Oh, I think.
And when somebody else says it, it's like, man, I think like that. That's why we have dark humor. People find that funny.
I was gonna say, I mean, I feel like we all got a psycho voice inside of our head. Like, I don't know if y'all are gonna admit it, but for me, I got two voices in my head. One that's always trying to be a good, nice, civilized person, and the other side that's like, yo, if I just veer to the left a little bit on the road, boom, 30 people dead.
Wow, that's intense.
Two, right? Boom.
That's intense.
But hey,
I'm never in the car.
Hey, how do I know I'm a normal person though? Because every time that happens, I think, oh shit, that'd be horrible. I can do that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna keep driving forward. See, I think that's the difference, really, between us and the psychos. Because I don't know about you, when I see a cute puppy, I start petting that shit. I'm like, oh man, this is adorable. I love this puppy. I'd love to keep it. How would people react if I just snapped its neck? That's not cool. That's not cool though. You know what I mean? So I think everybody's got different kinds of thoughts. You know what I mean? Voices just pop up in your head. You just think shit that's like inappropriate sometimes. The difference is though, we're all civilized adults. You know,
and are you really going to carry it through?
Are you really going to act like no? Because you love your mom and shit. You want to go back home. You're a normal person.
Yeah.
I think that's why, like, when we watch cartoons and shit, like, cartoons are an outlet. To me, a lot of people's first entrance into comedy is cartoons. And cartoons are ridiculous, man. Do you remember Looney Tunes?
Total suspension of reality.
They were beating the hell out of each other, blowing each other with guns, just shooting each other in the face. And all that would happen is, boom, a little black puff of smoke. You know what I mean? Right. These are, if you really think about the things that they were doing on Looney Tunes, these are dark, murderous things. They are literally trying to kill each other.
Even worse than that, Courage the Cowardly Dog.
Courage the Cowardly Dog.
My favorite.
It was
my favorite.
That's funny.
Yeah. Like going back and just analyzing some of those episodes, it's pretty dark humor.
And where does that come from? You know what I mean? That comes from people's heads. Like, people are sitting down thinking of these ideas, man. And like that's really, I feel like, why comedy can come from everywhere. You really never know, like,
even
when
in
you're
those
gonna
serious
get
situations.
Exactly. Even from really, really horrific, serious situations, people will be able to find the humor and the beauty in it. You know what I mean? And I think that's like I think that's what motivates a lot of comedians. I can't speak for everybody, but for me, what definitely motivates me is every time I come up with a joke that I'm able to share with somebody and I'm able to make them laugh, I feel like that was a tiny victory. You know what I mean? Even if it's the dumbest idea. Like I have videos where I mean, you've seen my videos.
My favorite one was the one where you're trying to help the homeless boy. You were the homeless person. So I'll share this with you guys afterwards. But it's so he's on a bench. He's a homeless guy, and the person goes up to him with a box of nuggets to give him some food. So like a 4 count, maybe 6 count, and he has nuggets. But the guy forgets to give him sauce, and he gets so pissed and enraged at the fact he doesn't have sauce that he stabs the guy. And it's hilarious. Just the execution of it. That's my favorite one to be done.
And but see, my favorite thing about that, right, is when you describe an idea like that. That sounds insane.
Yeah.
That sounds crazy. You just described a video where somebody was trying to give food to a homeless person and he got murdered.
And if you saw it in real life, you'd be in like severe distress. Yeah.
But because of the way that it was written, because of the way it was done, because of the music, because of the way it was dramatized, you were able to laugh. Because the video pointed you towards what was funny about it. And you mentioned laughing and learning, right? You know the reason babies laugh so much is because every time they laugh, they are learning information. Learning is fun for them. That's why when you play a little peekaboo game, they start giggling. Because they are learning, hey, even if I don't see his face, he's still here. It's a stupid thing to learn, but you know, they learn that and they start giggling and laughing. And to me, when you're able to make a grown adult laugh like a little kid, you know, you're really putting a spark in their head that is like making them learn something that they didn't think about in the past.
I never thought about that, but I do know that we tend to learn better when there's an emotional connection tied to an event or something that was said. So the laughter is definitely an experience of joy. So I would be inclined to believe that.
But basically what I was trying to ask Bryan, but do you guys feel that like political comedy should be taken like a little bit more seriously? Because if you look at certain things, certain late night shows like Trevor Noah, and they would joke about like Trump being on tape talking about he was fondling a woman. Do you feel people in society really look at that like, oh, they laugh and they just come back to it like, wait a minute, that's wrong? Or do you feel people just laugh at it and then just go back about their business, like, oh, whatever, and then maybe vote for Trump the next election or something?
So you're saying, should we take comedy more seriously?
Yes, in terms
specifically like
maybe not all political, but like not all comedy, but political comedy mostly.
See, but why would you want to take comedy serious? Like, of course, there's truth in it, but
he's talking about political comedy. So, like, because it's true in a sense.
Yes.
But you're forgetting the fact that it's true because he's making you laugh.
Exactly. I feel like it's in a way reinforcing bad behavior because
something that is reprehensible and there's no consequences for you just joking.
Like, did you see that Colbert show last night when he was talking about Trump doing whatever to the girl? Yeah, bro, that was funny. And that worked.
Yeah.
That's what he's saying.
But the people making the jokes in the audience, they have very little jurisdiction to actually influence and actually like carry out sentencing or just holding that person accountable.
I disagree. Ratings always hold people accountable. If you stop watching somebody, you know.
That's the comedian. I'm saying the subject matter that they're addressing. How do you hold them accountable?
You can always spread awareness, like you said, with the...
by changing our profiles to blue?
Exactly. Do something like that. They make some type of thing like that. Yes.
What is it for comedy awareness?
I don't know. Ask the comedian. Ask the comedian. No.
I mean, I think to the root of your question, I think to me, the second you start taking comedy seriously, it's not comedy. You're starting to lecture. So I think
not like when he's saying a joke, you'd be like you'd be like, oh no, I don't like that. But afterwards, you laugh during it. But afterwards,
like what you do with the message?
Yeah, exactly. What are you doing with the message?
I think that's why this is really important because you brought up the example of a lot of the women that Trump is accused of violating and abusing and stuff, and like this is a really really serious subject that is really traumatizing to a lot of people because. To a lot of people, even hearing the story reminds them of things that they have dealt with, people they know with have dealt with. You know, this is a problem that's really prevalent for a lot of people in a lot of people's homes. So I think when you're talking about something that personal, it's heavy. There's a lot of pressure on the comedian and on the writer to handle it well. At the same time, though, I don't think that would be a reason to shy away from talking about that subject matter because, like you just mentioned, yes, people will be laughing at this joke, right? But at the same time, it's reminding them in a way that this is the reality of the case. You live in a situation where your president is accused of violating all these women, and another one was just added to the list a couple of weeks ago. So people can forget. And especially with this, with the amount of media there is, like, you can get distracted very, very
Which is
easily.
with the attention span.
With the especially it's hard to have a long attention span and also be on
You have
social
everything
media.
just accessible to you.
Exactly. So I really think there is a lot of value on keeping the pressure, because the more people talk about it, the more people maintain an awareness about it. And to a degree, it's why you even brought it up. I mean, somebody might even be watching this podcast and say, I didn't know about that. Let me look more into it.
Yeah. Basically, that's all I just wanted to ask them. But anything else you guys want to talk about as far as the subject, as far as comedy? Cool.
I mean, would you mind if I ask y'all some questions?
That's what we're here for.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so what would y'all say your favorite kind of comedy is? Because when you were talking about different types of comedy, like, we spent a lot of time focusing on political comedy, right? You know, you got sitcoms, you got sketch comedy, you got movies, YouTubers. What would y'all say is your favorite?
Probably like skits and political comedy, really.
Okay.
I like skits. So, the Dave Chappelle show really got into skits, really. And then the night shows like Trevor Noah and everything like that really got into political comedy. Yeah.
That's dope. I'm glad you mentioned Dave Chappelle, because he's actually my favorite.
I don't know. I'm not really too familiar with the genres of comedy. So, if I could be descriptive, I'll probably say relatable comedy. Like, I like laughing at things that I've experienced, because it makes the joke even 10 times funnier. Like, oh yeah, I know exactly what that's like.
Like, I've been there.
Yeah, I've been there, I've done that. Like, that's hilarious. Like, so, I'll probably relatable comedy, if that is a genre. That's what I find
Real shit.
to be hilarious.
That's just the genre, real shit.
Yeah, I guess.
So I have a quite diverse not background, but like the taste in comedy. So for example, like my favorite, Chris Rock. I like Daniel Tosh. I like Key Peele. I like Paul Mooney. This is redneck comedian I like. His name is Dusty Slay. He's really funny. I found him on YouTube. Yeah, he's hilarious.
It's dope that you mentioned Key and Peele.
Yeah.
You could probably tell they're
they're
huge inspiration.
They are
for
so
me.
out there. Yeah,
Oh, they're funny too.
and the stuff that they come up with is because they're so diverse as individuals that they can make stuff that everybody can relate to, whether you're just somebody growing up in the neighborhood or whether you're like this nerdy guy who stays in and binges Star Wars over and over and over again. There's something that you can relate to them, and that's why they're so successful.
Yeah. I guess one other question I have for y'all. This is a question that people ask about rappers all the time, right? But I don't hear it asked about comedians that much. Do you think comedians have a responsibility to talk about real shit, like real subjects that affect people? Or do you think that comedians can get away with just poop jokes, fart jokes their whole career and never really have to touch on anything serious?
I believe they can get away with basically poop jokes like that and don't have to take it
I
seriously.
feel like who are we to tell a comedian what they can and can't talk about? And then also by them doing that, like if they're making just the poop jokes, they're not gonna thrive. How many times are you gonna laugh at the same poop jokes or the same concept, for example? Like they don't have that longevity.
If you are clever, you can make a million different unique poop jokes.
You could.
If you're clever.
People get tired of it though.
Yeah.
Whether it's still unique, it's still the same concept.
It
Regurgitated
depends.
over and
I
over
mean,
again.
the Bernie Mac show had at least 85 scenes of him getting kicked in the nuts, and I laughed every time. So some people's bar might be a little bit low, but
I guess I'm one of those people then.
Nah, you could make a million poop jokes and get away with it.
Yeah.
Just let's think of rap music in a perspective. What do you think of when I say describe rap music? What is rap music? What does Kevin Gates rap about all the time?
Violence,
Man.
Money, violence,
drugs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is
And women.
nearly all top 100 Billboard rappers rap about? Money, violence, drugs, all in the same aspect, all in the same concept. They
But
get
see,
away with it.
I think what's so appealing about rap, at least for me, is the skill level, how intricately they're able to weave and use the it's like poetry. That's exactly what it is.
That's the same way
And
with
then
a comedian
also
with poop jokes.
Right. Okay.
it's poetry.
I don't see it in the same light, but it's also like the skill of, like I said, how they weave the words together and they tell the story.
All right.
Versus like I feel like the poop jokes, for example, is a very primordial, very low level style of comedy. Like, it's not something that requires me to. I don't find insight in it, and I really don't find it funny.
But
you don't, just like
you gotta admit
somebody
how
that
low
doesn't
it
like
is.
rap.
But I'm saying there's people like that.
Well, hold on. You said your favorite thing about comedy is how relatable it is, right? The thing that poop jokes have over all types of jokes is they are the most relatable type of joke. Everybody's had a bad shit. Everybody's had a bad fart. Everybody can relate to that. You know, it's a nastiness we all share.
So I think when you're thinking about it as in a creative space, though, nearly almost everything is the same.
Mm-hmm.
We just present it to you in a different way, form of fashion, to where you don't think about it. This is what you just heard yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I play 2 rap songs right now and they rap about the same thing, you're probably not going to compare it to the last rap song because it sounded different, the beat was different, the flow was different. So you're not going to compare it to that. Just like if 2 comedians were right here, if he was here with somebody else and they both made a poop joke, you can't really compare it unless I tell you like they about to both make a poop joke, which one's better. Like, you know, you wouldn't be like, your joke was funnier than his if he was to say one 5 minutes later. You know what I mean? You're not going to think about it.
You wouldn't draw into direct comparison unless it was
addressed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just how like you don't think about rap music. Like you can, your Kevin Gates song can be the same song the same concept that the Baby just rapped about, but you're not going to know unless a person sitting in that car is like, I hate rap music because they all rap about the same thing.
No, unless you like actually listen to lyrics.
Yeah. But I mean, when you all right, so when you talk about lyrics, then you got to talk about like conscious rappers and stuff. So like you can't compare Kevin Gates to like Isaiah Rashad or Kevin Gates to.
I mean, you could, but they're drastically different.
Nah, they rap about 2 different concepts. So, all right, so you can't. Okay.
That in itself is a comparison.
What?
That they're so different. What makes them different?
The content that they put out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, in the type of content that they put out. So, Kevin Gates puts out gangster rap, just like, you know, you can put him in. You can't put him in the same category. Is what I'm saying. You can't put Isaiah Rashad in gangster rap because Isaiah Rashad don't look right in gangster rap. Or we can use.
That's not his niche.
We can use Jid as, y'all know who Jid is?
Yeah.
We can use Jid as a very good example. You can't put Jid in gangster rap. Like Jid, what? But you could put Kevin Gates, The Baby, Takeoff, Offset. You can put all them in gangster rap because they all rap about the same exact thing. So that's what I'm saying. Like you have parts in the creative spaces where they will rap about or not rap about. They will talk. They will have the same concept. You just won't notice it until it's addressed. Mm-hmm. That's what I mean by that. That's all I was trying to say.
You know what's dope? You just made my argument for why social media comedians are real comedians.
Oh, I don't say. See, I'm not. I don't like put titles on nothing. Like if you're funny and you're a comedian,
there's a space for it.
Yeah, if you're funny and you're a comedian, then hey, dude, you're a comedian. Like I'm not. Who am I to tell you that you're not a comedian? Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Just like who am I? If you see yourself as this person, who am I to tell you that you're not that person? You are who you think you are. So I'm gonna let you be who you want to be. Just like I'm gonna be who I want to be, regardless if you like me for being like this or being like that. If I'm neither, then I'm just out of luck. So, so I don't know. I don't put labels on people, man. If this is how you define yourself, then hey, that's you. That's how I'm gonna address you. That's how I'm going to, you know, label you. If that's how you label yourself, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I just don't think it's something. If somebody's like, you know, like putting a label on social media comedians, like, dude, like if you've probably met him in real life, he's probably funny in real life. I bet you, then you would say, oh, bro, you should be a comedian. You're not gonna say, hey, bro, you should be a social media comedian. You know, you're not gonna do that. So
even on social media, I feel like you're still thinking of what you want to present as for comedy. Like if you're doing skits or something like that, you're still thinking of the ideas. So I feel that still makes you a comedian.
It's the same amount of work, man. And really, the only difference is back in the day, you never saw how people came up. You only saw them after they got their TV show. You only saw them after they were already in movies or after they were already touring. But right now, because of the internet, we're kind of in a space where you see people from the beginning. You can see people from the first video they ever posted, you know, the first thing they ever posted on Twitter to where they're at now. So because the growth is something that's being documented, you know, you can't really go out there and say this person isn't a comedian, this person isn't that, because you didn't know what Bernie Mac was like before he was Bernie Mac. You didn't know what Dave Chappelle was like before he was Dave Chappelle, you know what I mean? But now we get to see that.
Yeah. Gotcha. But yeah. But what do you guys think though on on the topic to discuss, what role does comedy play in today's society to you guys? Okay, comment below. Let us know. Okay.
Welcome to the show. Go and take a seat. Let's talk about the world while taking a sip of tea. A bunch of brothers come together. That's something we love to see. The company can't get no better. We come from running the streets, but we here now. The vibes all good. We survived. We gon' try and show the world inside the minds of some visionary brothers. We only got each other. We don't support each other. Ain't nobody gonna love us. We can talk about the violence, the silence, the Mayans, the state that the minds and the science, defiance, living and dying and laughing and crying, pure bliss and heartache and quitting and trying. That's real from the heart, truth in the heart. To come up in the future, we just gotta play our part. Can we handle that? Let them tear us apart. Infusion breakdown show. Go and talk about your thought.